So they went back that far. So it's a 15-year investigation started 2021 with the murder of Rayshawn Williams. But, another thing, 600 said interesting. The police initially went over Big U's house about Rayshawn Williams simply to ask the family what they knew about Rayshawn, what he was into. They weren't suspects. And they heard his wife call him and say, hey, they're over here asking about Rayshawn, which made them suspicious. Wow. So Big U's people and himself were not trained in evasive, techniques. Defendant, blah, 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 at rescue. Despite his life of crime, defendant never wanted to return to jail, so he went to great lengths to involve law enforcement detection, tamper with witnesses. Recent examples of defendant's acts or threats of violence. So I didn't say in the beginning, this is obviously the prosecutors taped up a thing they gave to the court before today's bond hearing for Big U, which was, of course, denied. Murder of RW. 2021, defendant drove to Las Vegas with another Enterprise member to confront RW. A rapper signed to defendant's record label was also a close friend of defendant's son and someone defendant had known for years. Apparently upset about RW's lack of studio production and purported diss song, defendant left the studio with RW in the middle of the night for RW's Airbnb. RW leaving his Airbnb with his belongings was the last time he was seen alive. He was found the next morning with gunshot wounds to the head. Defendant returned to the studio hours after he had left, claiming he had gone to the gym at 2 a.m. Defendant's cell phone, the obstructionist conduct of other members of the Enterprise, and defendant's own words and reaction intercepted on the wire prove his guilt of this heinous crime. RW's murder not only demands defendant's continued detention, but cautions against what may happen to other witnesses, cooperators, and victim or the defendant to be released on bond. So they feel they got him for the murder. They're not just mentioning it as something to make them sound bad. I predict they're going to charge him with that. You've heard all this stuff about the dispensaries, the 30,000. I'll tear this bitch up. There won't be a club there no more. Intercepted call defendant's vehicle to call extortion victim right now and stated he would go out there and kill that N-word. February 14th, 2023. Another intercepted call. Robinson told defendant that Robinson told Jew Boy that he owed the Big U Enterprise money. They would allow a payment plan, but if he were not to pay, they were going to shut this MFer down. Power to direct violence. This, makes you dangerous in the government's eyes, making them that much more dangerous. Defendant holds power over others threatening and committing violence. For example, November 23rd, 2022, on an intercepted call, defendant said that he can pay 3 people $50 each to beat someone up, and described paying people to mess up a store that was refusing to provide defendant a discount. On April 17th, 2023, on another intercepted call, defendant directed an individual to deliver a message to another reefer dispensary owner that defendant said F him and that he fucked with the wrong guy. Despite a 23-year sentence for armed robbery, defendant stayed armed. Since at least July 20th, 1992, defendant has been prohibited from even possessing firearms based on his felony convictions for second-degree robbery, conspiracy, and dope trafficking, for which he received a 23-year prison term. California, you get about half time your first, so he did about 12 years. So he went in 92, he came out in like 03 or something. Upon his release from prison, he nevertheless continued to use firearms himself, like when he murdered RW, and directed others to use firearms, like when they robbed victim one's dispensary. You've heard a lot of this stuff here. Defendant is not only a physical danger, but a financial danger. Defendant's crimes against victims are not confined only to violence. He spent decades creating a facade of a reformed gang member who seeks to build rather than destroy his community. So disguised, defendant used that persona primarily to take from the very community he claims to help, siphoned off much of the money into his personal bank account. Defendant got richer and richer off his fraud by like his extortions and robberies, owning multiple homes, driving a Mercedes, taking lavish trips, and shopping for luxuries like a $30,000 necklace. The money taken from donors and taxpayers' pockets will never find their intended benefactors, the at-risk youth and children of Crenshaw. The damage cannot be undone, but defendant's success in deceiving politicians, celebrities, and community activists, as well as the public at large, further militates. I don't think that's the proper use of that word, Mr. Prosecutor. I'm sure I have a higher score in the GRE than you, but that's another story. Further militates against his release back into that community as he attempts to fund an expensive defense. Defendant is fluent in obstruction. All of it may be founded on crime, but defendant built a charmed life following his 23-year sentence for armed robbery. He does not want to give it up and uses obstruction frequently to avoid that. Destruction of surveillance footage, use of encrypted applications like FaceTime, demands to meet in person, use of multiple phones, orders not to speak to law enforcement, and chastising of any perceived or suspected cooperators. A few are also highlighted here. Defendant instructed a victim's relative that the victim was to, quote, go to the lineup, tell him to pick the wrong person to insulate defendant's associate from the charges. A master manipulator, defendant told another associate that to influence the media for his lawsuit against law enforcement, he should show both negative and positive aspects of his life, wear glasses, and say that he was working with developing options, even though he was not. Oh, we got a fraudster. Multiple intercepted calls, defendant talked about at least breaking a witness's jaw. After fleeing with his phones in the hours before his scheduled arrest in an attempt to intimidate and dissuade anyone from cooperating, defendant posted publicly on Instagram, naming his co-defendants and known opponents, instructing the public not to associate with them and claiming that if they did, they were not black. In an attempt to poison the jury pool, defendant posted on Instagram claiming racial profiling, ignoring that almost every single one of defendant's victims, from RW to many of his extortion, robbery, fraud victims, and the at-risk use, are almost all black, and blaming his co-defendants and opponents for the charges filed against him. So, yeah, that's it. Moreover, is currently charged, defendant faces a statutory maximum of well over 600 years. Even discounting defendant's criminal history due to its age, is currently charged. Defendant faces a likely guidelines range of life in prison based on offense level of 43 for count 1 alone. Mr. Henley. The evidence defendant committed charged offenses is overwhelming and cannot be ignored. History and characteristics of the defendant, yeah. So he was turned down. That was the prosecutor's report to the judge about why he should be turned down. They're going to charge him with that murder, 9 out of 10. I bet you, like as a specific crime, not just as part of the RICO. That would be a good way for someone that's trying to get out of it. But it looks like he did it by himself. But, this is so similar, killing a rapper over studio equipment, studio time. It's the same situation he had with Nipsey. So I'm going to recover Big U and Nipsey next. But that's today's update. Big U did not get bond. That's not a surprise. But pretty excoriating description of him from the prosecutor. And it sounds like he's tiptoeing towards that murder charge, probably in Las Vegas. I'll profit American dope.